as we've seen the ability to have data on every single thing that's happening online, some larger brands have actually forgot about that long-term approach with that broad reach, more emotional story, because it's so easy to have those targeted activation ads. It's not one or the other, it's both working together. And how can your brand lift up those activations throughout the year? To set us up here, let's watch a few ads and see where they drove impact.
Introducing Fresh Step Clean Paws. With low tracking litter, your vacuum becomes a cat toy. Let's make litter less of a mess. Let's start fresh.
This was best in class for consideration, but worst in class is what I like to put it, for awareness and recall. Most brands, this is always shocking to them. They're like, wait a second, this was aimed at awareness, yet it drove consideration. Now we'll get into why this drove consideration in a bit, but continue thinking in this vein. So let's watch another one. This is from Almay.
As you guys can see on my right eye, these lashes are so much more voluminous. They look really thick and flirty, whereas the lashes without mascara, you can't even really see them. The Almay Thickening Mascara. This mascara really builds beautifully on top of itself.
Worst in class, again, lowest quartile, bottom performer for awareness and recall. Best in class for purchase intent, and again, we'll get into it. And one more just for fun.
Hi, I'm Bob Giovanni.
Is it dry out here? Or is it just me?
I'm joking, of course. We're here with a live studio audience in Death Valley, California.
We saw that this one actually hit 2 objectives as best in class, awareness and consideration, but still didn't hit everything. And what we found through this is one size doesn't fit all, and that each brand lift objective benefits from custom creative. Only 32% of top performing ads hit for 2 or more objectives. We measure 5. Out of an analysis of 8,000 ads, there was one that was best in class across all 5 metrics. So it is possible, but I wouldn't say it's a best practice. The methodology here, this is important. We started off by watching a ton of ads. That's the foundation of our team. We human coded and reviewed about 1,400 ads, mostly mixed between best in class and worst in class, across 44 unique creative characteristics. So think of, was there a CTA? Was there diversity? Was it a male and a woman in it? Was it just men? All across every one of those videos. From there, we expanded the data set to utilize a machine learning model that looked at what objects are in the frame when it's a best in class asset, and also what's negatively correlated performance. What this allowed us to do was to say, okay, we're seeing this, but when we expand the data set, that's all machine learning is a way to expand the sample size of what you're seeing with your own 2 eyes. AI is not having one Einstein, it's having a billion interns. We tapped into the interns to help us with this analysis. We looked at just the beauty category because of the importance of YouTube creators and influencers to see, like, beyond all the other things, like how are they communicating with their words on the platform. And then the last piece was, again, that third-party research. It was a big project, a big lift, but what we think we got to was something really tangible as far as what drives from creative perspective. The goal here, I mentioned it earlier, Kim, appreciate this saying, I love it. Good ads are subjective, impactful ads are objective. So our aim here is just to get a little more unbiased with what our best practices are. Thinking about these metrics working together though, I mentioned this earlier, we see awareness, recall, consideration, and purchase intent being those short-term ROI things. You can't drive purchase intent until someone knows about your product, but those can be shifted in the short term. What short-term mean? 6 months or less. When we think about favorability and brand preference, that needs to be a play and really associated with long-term growth. How do people feel about your brand? And that is really hard to achieve with one campaign. So what we want to think about is separating these metrics and saying, don't just pick one, understand what your goal is, but don't neglect the overall feeling that people have when they see your brand. That old brand love metric seems like it's coming back into play. And with that, when you do master this and really have that growth in how people are feeling, we see that those activation tactics that you have throughout the year, Cyber Monday, Black Friday, Valentine's Day sale, whatever it is, back to school, the stronger the affinity for the brand, the more effective those tactics are going to work. We don't say it's one or the other, it's how can we swim in the same direction with what we're doing with our brand and how we're selling product. Well, let's get into it. Awareness and recall, I know it. What can we do to drive these lifts? First things first is that product rules the day here. When we looked at this, we measured, was this product led or was this brand equity led? And we saw that 84% of best in class ads here were actually product led. That stat by itself, maybe not that interesting, but you see the delta between worst in class. It was 26 percentage points. When we think about those big hero spots, a lot of times that you're seeing, maybe during the Super Bowl, those are maybe not the best ads for actually driving awareness, because a lot of these brands have super high awareness. Those are actually more adept at shifting favorability. If there is the goal of driving recall of a new message, driving awareness, lead with the product.
That's cool.
When I'm going out, I need to feel confident.
I love this.
These are oil-absorbing sheets, and they're portable.
I'm gonna try to get all the oil.
That's wild.
This gets the job done.
So as we're watching these ads, also, you're gonna see that product rules for a lot of these metrics, but the way the product is showcased always kind of differs a little bit. This is not a demo. It shows the product in use a bit, but it isn't a tutorial. It isn't like, take this out, use this. The next piece is speed up front really drives impacts. When we're thinking about speed, in this context, we're just looking at the amount of cuts in the first 5 seconds, and these ads were 34% faster, and majority of these had 4+ cuts in the first 5 seconds. What we're aiming for is this one. I love that ad. I love that one. And we don't want this one for awareness.
Introducing Fresh Step Clean Paws.
What's interesting though is that this was a brand who's actually thinking about this already, so you can see that they have this one that kind of shocks the senses versus the one that actually gives you the value of the products. Thinking about it's not that one's bad, one's good, it's that this one's just really great at shifting awareness and recall and maybe not so much other metrics. And then here, breaking the fourth wall, speaking to the audience, speaking to camera. Kim spoke about it earlier, it is a YouTube best practice. However, when we looked at this metric, we saw that 92% of ads still felt like an ad. It was still meant to be entertaining, not necessarily engaging. Now, there's a specific point where we do want to break the fourth wall, but if our goal is this, we want it to still feel more like the audience is the audience.
I do my hair toss, check my nails. Baby, how you feeling? I do my hair toss, check my nails. Baby, how you feeling?
So there's the, alluding to the audience, but we're not speaking directly, versus Priyanka here.
I'm a little nervous about this. I would call Priyanka fish-lipped, but I don't want to insult the fish. I can't even, because when I laugh, my lips become even bigger.
So this is also a 2-minute spot, but a lot of times when we show these, people say, well, maybe it wasn't aimed at awareness, but they were measuring it. So you can only assume that that was one of the goals. What we saw here is that this came into play more so for favorability, not to spoil anything. Thinking about building for objective, this is one that's interesting. We've been banging the drum for speaking to camera for a really long time, but we learned something is that, not all the time. And depending on our objective, it might not be the best move. And then the area of exploration that I think is interesting, Kim mentioned it, is something we learned via that machine learning analysis, was that showing home and personal care products outside the home tended to drive impact. I'm gonna show you an example from Listerine, but my favorite one was from Glad trash bags. Glad is the trash, it's not gonna rip when you take out the trash. Okay, that's a good value prop, but it's one we've seen over and over again. So instead of changing the value prop, the strength is the same, it's not gonna rip. Don't use it as a trash bag, use it as a suitcase. So they have a 90-second spot that shows this person utilizing the trash bag as a suitcase. So it got us to thinking about, is that a way to kind of drive interest or awareness or recall in a category that's maybe not as exciting as a new car or a new movie trailer. One of the areas we're actually launching a test next month is, in this category is maybe doing something that's a little unexpected and maybe in a new context, a way to actually get people to lean forward for something that they automatically purchase. I buy these trash bags, no advertiser's gonna change my mind. Maybe if I showcase it in a semi-unexpected way, that could work. Listerine did this for the launch of their Ready Tabs. Big takeaway with this one is that you can do these on the go, but people were still utilizing them like they would a mouthwash, which is basically overshadowing what the whole reason they made the product in the first place. So they showed it in a different context.
Listerine Ready Tabs presents The Joys of Street Swishing. This is Lori, and these are the new Listerine Ready Tabs. She chews for 10 seconds and the tab transforms to liquid. Nice. Then she swishes for 30 seconds to get a whole mouth clean feeling. Extra nice. Now she's got 4 hours of fresh breath ahead of her. And voila.
Has anybody seen these, use these? So they actually came in for a workshop about 1.5 years ago, and they brought these in. I'm telling you, it was a little weird to say, here's a mouthwash product, but you're going to swallow it. So what they're overcoming is that people were so wait a second, that doesn't seem right, that they actually had to speak directly to this in this more kind of unexpected way, and it seemed to really drive impact. So that's an area of exploration for us. We are going to transition into that mid-funnel consideration metric, and Kim's going to walk you through both consideration and purchase intent.
And welcome to consideration. Yeah, actually the last thing that Jeff showed you with the unexpected context, I actually think that that's a great device for a briefing or a creative session and ideation, which is to say, maybe it's not the output necessarily, but let's start to think about what we're trying to talk about, and let's try to do it in an entirely different place and in a different way. So I always try to add that too, that maybe it's not the thing that you're going to do and actually produce, but it could be the things behind the scene that get a good brainstorm going and get you to a new place. So welcome to consideration. The way we broke these up I thought was interesting because consideration has been the wild card for me when I'm thinking about the funnel, because the learnings that came out of it were really surprising, I thought, and the examples that we see. So let me walk you through a little bit about what's happening once we leave the world of awareness. The very first example doesn't necessarily apply to everybody. It definitely applies to our friends in health and beauty who love showing you every product they've ever made all together on one screen all the time. And what we found here was that when you're getting into consideration, where you're kind of landing the plane a little. You want people to be able to see a little bit of this product in their lives, and how it applies to them. And so we want to land the plane. And we see here that 92% of the top performing ads focus on one item. Versus everything. Now, there might be two reasons for that, if you want my opinion. One is, again, I want to be able to focus so I can picture myself using this product in real life. But also, what did we remember earlier from the small screens? I might not be able to see all those products on my small telephone screen, and then I kind of lose the point entirely. So let's look at what's working here. Nice pacing, nice supers. It holds my attention, but I'm really focused on one thing. Whereas even with a celebrity, this other ad didn't do so well. I mean, I can barely see what those all are right now, and we're looking at a pretty big screen, let alone on the phone, and so it's too much. One of the questions I got, and I don't know if this is relevant for you guys once, was, yeah, but what about 2 products? So suddenly we're gambling. We're gambling on how many products or too many products. And I said, if the products contextually go together, like say a foundation and a powder, or a cover-up, or eyeshadows, 3 eyeshadows that go together, or something for that, I'm like, if they make sense together, I think that's okay. We didn't test it, but creatively that feels right to me, because I'm getting the synergy between the objects versus barf, here's everything we made, and here's everything we sell. So I think with a little context you could get away with more, but I really would start to land the plane a little bit when you want people to consider what you're selling. So the second one, this is the one that surprised me. It's a product demo. I would have expected to have seen this in purchase intent, and it was showing up much stronger in consideration. Now, what's interesting, and as Jeff alluded to, even though we started off this narrative in the home and personal care sector, we've been seeing a lot of places that it can play as well. These learnings really apply to other verticals, which really starts to make it quite interesting, a learning like this, because not everyone has a physical product. A lot of people have services, a lot of people will offer different things, and yet I think this still applies. And so the question becomes quite a great creative one, which is how do you demonstrate a service in a way that I understand how to use it? And we might see a few examples of that actually when we go to the True View for Action section. But for these examples here, you're gonna see some practical applications of a product demo.
After walking 6 miles at an amusement park, Bill's back needed a vacation from his vacation. So he stepped on the Dr. Scholl's kiosk. It recommends our best custom fit orthotic to relieve foot, knee, or lower back pain, so you can move more. Dr. Scholl's, born to move.
So interesting, but also now I know how it works. Like, I see that, done. I get what you're selling, I know how to use it. 90% of our top performing ads are really gonna show you, hey man, this is the product, how it works, how it feels, what it does. And again, that's where me starting to see myself in a driver's seat here. You know, I'm starting to see myself with this product, so consideration all the way. Calls to action. I was showing you that little search bar earlier when we were looking. Calls to action were not really showing up in purchase intent. They were actually showing up more in consideration, and they were having impact. Granted, only 50%, but still this is what we're seeing. So in consideration, I kind of want to do something. I want to learn more. Maybe you have more content for me. Maybe I just want to read more up. Maybe I want a free offer. Maybe I want something else. But in this area, and I don't know when it happened, creatively I was trying to figure out, I felt like at some point in the world it got kind of like gauche to put a call to action in your ad. It felt like you were like selling stuff instead of like making art. And suddenly all these calls to action fell out. And suddenly everyone woke up and were like, oh, they're ads. We should probably tell people what to do. And that's what we see here. Actually, is people are like, well, is there more? Is there more? Remember, if you get chosen, we want to go deeper. A call to action lets you do that.
She's on another level.
Here, you can see it right at the bottom.
Holy moly, look at that coverage already.
The coverage is so on point.
So here it's omnipresent. I don't know if that's necessary all the time, but certainly let people know there's something to do. Don't forget about it. And when one of the things, the services that we provide for some of our clients is, you know, they'll send us storyboards or spot and be like, what would you recommend I can do to this? And you would be surprised how many times we're like, you didn't tell anybody to do anything. Like, what do you want them to do? You want them to act? Oh my God, you gotta tell them what to do. So keep that in mind too. And I think that's also a great area for exploration, which is to say, what kind of calls to action for this brand or this audience and in this moment. Okay, so this is an interesting one because it differs in another part of the funnel, which is the idea of reality and authenticity. And we see here with our object correlation analysis, dance, fun, people, human things, we're having a good time, something that feels down to earth, and yet what's negatively correlated is supermodel or technology, things that feel apart from my fellow humans, things that feel a little too much, a little too fake. There's a time and a place for those things for sure. But for consideration, again, I wanna see this in my life. I wanna be able to picture it. And thusly, I want the humans in here, I want the colors, I want everything going on to feel like a slice of real life.
Pendant un bain Switzal, tout le reste peut attendre.
These guys could be in the next room. I mean, this is like such a slice of life, and it really did well for that. I would tell you to keep this kind of parked a little bit in the back because it's gonna make more sense when you see another part of the funnel and how it isn't like this. And you're like, oh, I get how these things are playing off of each other. And that was interesting to us too. It's almost like how this whole presentation works together and you see how things are dialed up and down in different areas to have different strengths. So keep that in mind. We like real stuff. And speaking of real stuff, human language. Jeff touched on this too, as we were really curious and we wanted to look at what kind of language is being used when we get to this phase. So we looked at user-generated content, and we looked at the top words that were, you know, appearing: bad, cute, mean, totes, no, that did not really, but okay, like okay, and try. It feels like person talk. Look at the words on the brand side: applause, extract, introducing, pollution, I'm still not entirely sure, but you can start to feel this robotic formality that the brands are talking with, where we just found out that we want a little bit more of a human connection, and this is how the humans talk to each other. So there's a real lesson there in what does it mean to present your story, especially for consideration. How do you add this more human tone? Who do you ask to speak on your behalf in a spot? How do you make it feel authentic? And certainly we have experiments that are starting in this area as well, because it's really a hot topic to really start defining what this means to have natural conversations in your ads. I'm also going to walk you through purchase intent here. Maybe a little foreshadowing that I will also be walking you through TrueView for Action. A little same and different between the two of them, but here we're just looking at purchase intent across all these top and bottom performing ads that we saw. So the great news here is that for purchase intent, we are kind of all business. We're getting down to brass tacks. So things are getting more powerful here, and here we're talking pretty much, again, it sounds a little familiar to awareness. I just want to know about the product. I don't know the song and dance. I don't need to know everything. I don't need about your brand. I'm not here for the brand. I'm here for the thing you want me to buy. 96% best in class is really just about that. Tell me about the stuff, not about what you're doing in the world.
Let's
you want results, you need a personal trainer in your home on your terms.
Hard work gets rewards.
A trainer that live controls your machine.
Everything you got right now, let's go!
To give you a truly interactive experience.
I don't know that I'm gonna look great in a dress. I don't know I'm gonna feel amazing. I don't know that the brand saves the whales. I don't need to know any of that. This is the product, this is what it does, and that's all I need. That's getting me down further. Now I'm really starting to think about what you want me to focus on. We talked a lot earlier in the day about bumpers, and I keep kind of throwing it in there. And I'm not saying necessarily that bumpers are the thing that you want to always be using for purchase intent, but certainly we see that the ads are shorter. 3 seconds, how amazing that we deal with 3 seconds. And we're like, that's a really significant amount of time that the ads are short, or holy crap, and it does make a difference. So the way I always say it is when you're getting to this, there's a time and a place to tell your story and tell a rich story. We know the ads are getting longer. Purchase intent might not be it. Here, we're like everyone in, out, and no one gets hurt. Just get me to the story. Now, the example we have here is actually a creative ad. I think it's got a great creative story. It's not too utilitarian. We'll see one of those in a second. But certainly don't luxuriate. Try to get everyone where you're going as fast as you can.
Do you need the most trusted battery in your smart lock? Maybe not. Maybe you could trust you won't have to actually talk to your neighbor.
Are you watching the game tonight?
Or you could just trust Duracell.
That was nice, and I felt like I got a story out of it, but I didn't feel like I was there too long. I felt like I was there just the right amount of time to kind of seal the deal. Aw, it's our girl again. So this is where she shows up. This is where when you guys knew it, where she works the hardest. This is the 90% of these ads. This is, again, not about like, I feel so pretty, like I feel really confident, I feel really great. This is all about, these lashes are great, these are not, buy this one. Like down to brass tacks. I won't show too much of it again, but just as a reminder.
As you can see on my right eye, these lashes are so much more.
I mean, seriously, you might as well just look for a second because her lashes are wildly different between both of these, and I buy into it every time I see it. But this is okay. This is okay. We don't have to start getting into this whole emotional thing. There's a time and place where your emotions are going to work hard for you. It doesn't necessarily need to be in purchase intent, which I think is kind of interesting. We're cool. We're cool with it being down and dirty. And here's the one that feels very utilitarian when we look at object correlation, where we kind of like those unexpected locations and things in awareness, not so much here. Like, put the guy in the kitchen so I know what's going on and make it easy.
Skip drying with Finish Jet Dry. For cabinet-ready dishes right out of your dishwasher.
And you can see the terms here are so practical, they're so logical, they're pretty much in situ versus negatively correlated, which go down a story rabbit hole, which we don't necessarily need. We don't need it here. We need it in other places, but not in purchase intent. And of course, this is something we say all the time, but we did see it a lot here, specifically in purchase intent. Audio should not be kind of the last thing you think about as an add-on, whether it is somebody speaking, whether it is the tempo of background music that you have in the ad, we know that this can have an impact on you. And the quote here is one we like about the impact it has out in the real world, you know, going to a physical store. Certainly louder, crazier, more wonderful music at these like hip clothing stores can really put you in the mood to buy something. And so we are actually experimenting right now with this. Does that work in a digital space, in an online ad? Does a tempo change your intent to purchase, or does it not? So this got us really curious. Again, the more we learn, the more we question, and the more we want to explore. But we certainly know that audio plays a big role. And remember back to the very first thing I showed you. Remember Dr. Fork, how dead and silent those ads felt without some kind of voice even in it. Definitely on YouTube, you want to have your sound in there for sure. Now, I'm going to turn it over for the final section of this presentation. Specifically, it's favorability. It is the wild card. It's the one nobody knows they want, but we found out it's pretty rad. The forgotten metric. Jeffrey, take it away.
Thank you. Favorability, the forgotten metric. The reason why I say that is when we look at the home and personal care category, 90% of brands are measuring recall. Less than 30% are measuring favorability. It's been one because it's not correlated with short-term sales. That brands have neglected, and their creative story is not necessarily in a place to resonate with it. So we noticed a lot of things here. So Les Binet and Peter Field, I wanted to reference them because this is really a core component of their research, is that the power of brand perception is really, really important. And this is the various literature they published over the last 18 years. But the one that really started to open up this line of thinking was the long and short of it, and thinking about the balance between long-term brand building and perception and that product activation. And we've seen that penetration and market share is driven by preference. The correlation between brand favorability and unit share, so long-term growth, is at 88%. So when measured against other metrics such as awareness or loyalty or advocacy, it beats it by a pretty wide margin. Now, this was released at the end of 2016. It was refreshed last summer, and these metrics held up. And what's really interesting, and this might be obvious, but again, when you see the number, it sort of makes you start to consider things differently, is that the more premium your price is within a category, so not luxury, but like how expensive are you to the median? And as that premium of price goes up, the power of favorability is even more important. The correlation is actually at 94%. So if you are in a space that's a bit more premium versus your competitors, perhaps focusing on that favorability metric is the way that you need to lean to. Kim is very passionate about this Brawny case study. So the reason why I like this one is because Brawny actually, for all intents and purposes, was a challenger brand against Charmin. Charmin has remarkable market share versus Brawny, and Brawny will never have the budgets to go against them. But what they did was lean into a more powerful emotional story that helped lift up their activation tactics. So Kim, why do you like this one so much?
What it's showing is that you can have a really great, powerful, always-on creative campaign that can do some heavy lifting for you, and yet at the same time you can find something that's a little left of center but brand appropriate to rise the interest. And so I gotta show you this. So I'm gonna just show you, look, the ad right here is their brand campaign. It's funny, it's clever, you get it. Let's watch it.
Well, that's a waste of a paper towel.
It's too big, man.
Okay.
New Brawny Terra Square. The strength for messes, big, small, and in between.
That's so me too. I'm always like, we can rip that in half. I mean, come on now. So now look at the Brawny product. So they have barely a spokesperson, kind of a spokesperson, who's a man. And so what they said is, wouldn't it be interesting if that we started to lean into the fact that really anyone can be Brawny, of Brawny. And you see now under favorability, this more long-term message that really says what the brand stands for, and they start to replace the man with women. So women's empowerment becomes the story that they're trying to tell. They put it on the packaging, they're in social media, you can see Ellen at the bottom, and they're not replacing their primary campaign. They're not saying we are the brand of female empowerment. They're saying we have a place that we can tell a story here. And they start to also see this impact on their other main brand campaign, which is just great. It's kind of the magic potion that they found, more bang for their buck, and I think these numbers really say a lot.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about it is that it doesn't take away from what you're doing from like your activation strategy, but is there a way to tap into something a little bit more meaningful? Especially as your consumer gets younger, the more they want to see their values reflected in the brands that they're buying. So obviously that's women's empowerment. Unfortunately, it still probably is a political message in some forums, but we don't have to have something like that if the goal is having a brand purpose. It can be something a lot different. I mean, you think about the spectrum of it, saving the whales, saving the manatees, saving something. It doesn't always have to be cause related. It could be something a lot more simple. So we'll show you a couple examples.
Yeah, and here, I mean, it's really tone. Sometimes it can just be tone. It's a point of view. It's a point of view, and I think we'll see a little bit about how we explore that.
Getting into the first one, this is where that purpose comes into play. When we first started rolling out this research, purpose drives connection, but we didn't actually have that line underneath it, but there's a spectrum. And what we've noticed is like some brands they cannot have something that's provocative or controversial or even political. We need to have something. And what we realized is purpose doesn't have to be related to that. It could be something as simple as just like having the confidence to go without makeup, which is what SK2's been doing for quite some time.
I just landed in Japan for the Bear Skin project. I'm so excited to be here. I can't wait to start. My very first bearskin shoot with no makeup on. I've been using facial treatment essence for weeks now, and I can feel it helping my skin. I'm a little anxious.
So we mentioned that these ads feel different, not just from purpose, but that's a very curated, story-driven visual. You saw the vertical shot of her like she's on her iPhone. Some of these ads actually feel like a high-gloss Instagram feed, very story-driven. You think about ads like Dream Crazy from Nike. That's a really story-driven piece, which is, I think, the number one thing I notice with these ads is how product is the secondary piece and like what the overall emotion and story and what you stand for comes to. I like this one from Dollar Shave Club as well. So this one came out around the same time that what we'll fondly recall the Gillette incident. When Gillette made a stand with their ads with moving beyond just the best a man can get to actually encouraging men to perhaps be a little better. So the trolls had a blast with that one, and actually Kim and I had the opportunity to work with the brand to think about how to answer that. But what we've thought is like, you know, you don't always have to respond, but also sticking with that long-term purpose is that. But this came out at the same time. It shows that purpose doesn't always have to be that bigger piece. It could be something as simple as I gotta be me.
Almost finished.
I want to live, not merely survive. And I won't give up this dream of life that keeps me alive.
We'll pause there. So one thing to notice in here is that one, it feels like Dollar Shave Club, but we've talked a lot about production value and this needs to have that story driven. I think that this one was actually shot all on one set. So just because it has more of a curated story driven approach doesn't mean we gotta always have a celebrity in there and we have to be like that Dior spot you saw earlier with Natalie Portman. It doesn't have to be like that. It can still be a little simpler execution as long as the story is strong. But this is where that purpose comes into play. It's not necessarily going to move product in the short term, but it'll actually really connect that consumer to a cause and really drive a more kind of visceral connection with the brand. The next piece here is this is where we can lean into a longer story. These ads were 6 seconds longer versus the average across the other KPIs. We mentioned 3 seconds shorter in purchase intent. This is like slapping on a bumper at the end of your creative. So you have the opportunity to lean into a longer story, which I think from a creative perspective is really exciting. And we saw multiple ads that were over 2 minutes long here. Lean into a longer story. This is an ad that I adore from Olay that features Busy Phillips and a pretty well-known influencer.
Hi, I'm Busy Phillips. I'm an actor for 20 years. That's not possible. I'm not that old. Just kidding.
When I was younger, my parents always used to say wear SPF, and I used to really dislike wearing it because it would turn my skin purple.
Well, sometimes SPFs tend to be heavy. You know, I've had.
So you notice that not only is the story longer, we're really zoomed in, but we're speaking directly to camera. This is where that breaking the fourth wall really comes into play here, and that tapping into influencers will really work hard for you as well. So you saw Busy Phillips, celebrity, but she has a very kind of digital friendly approach, I guess. And then you pair it with Lily Singh, who's really well known in the space, and what you have is sort of the best of both worlds and one that they've really committed to. So Face Anything launched at the end of 2017, you're still seeing this message and actually something that they're going to continue to double down on through 2020. So that's what we're getting at when it comes to something that's a little bit more purpose-driven. You have to commit to it because most of those big changes won't be seen in 6 months. I mentioned influencers. We thought it'd be consideration where influencers would be most valuable. They are valuable there, but this is really interesting to us that 328% more likely a top favorability ad would have influencers versus a traditional celebrity. So Liquid Plumber, this has been one that's been effective. They've done so many iterations of it, and all it is the drain test with VAT19, which is a pretty popular YouTube channel.
I think we're clogged, bro.
All right. They have so many iterations of this exact story, and what's fun about it is that you can customize based on the time of year. So during Christmas time, they do some food that's related to Christmas. During Thanksgiving, you have turkey. During Easter, you have ham. You have all of these things that are related. You have 4th of July, you have hot dogs and hamburgers. So not only did the platform allow them to do something simple that people love, but it also allowed for easy refreshes throughout the year so that creative wear out was never even a concern. What we want to avoid is poor Penelope here with Lancome. So they're trying to tap into that conversation, but it feels so polished that it's like, you might as well just like show a scene lift from a movie of her or something like that, because there's just so a lack of authenticity there. And that's what that talking to customers This is where we do it. So I mentioned it earlier, breaking the fourth wall. Priyanka wasn't so great in recall, was worst in class, but crushed it for favorability. So this is where 2x more likely these ads to speak to the audience than across the consumer journey. And specifically in favorability, there was a 29% delta between best in class, worst in class. Like this was a really strong finding that this really helps drive is just speaking directly to the consumer. The finding here that brands need to do better at, though, is that talking to them isn't enough. So we've looked at those captions analysis. Kim highlighted one area within beauty, but we saw that these natural speech patterns from creator videos, it's not just saying you, it's actually saying like you guys, you know, words that actually can encourage a two-way conversation. Creators are really, really good at this. Brands aren't yet. So there's a 70% difference with people saying you know or you see in the creator space versus how brands speak. They've tapped into the power of you in speaking, but it's actually still like you will love this, not you guys, you know, you can, you want, and having that two-way conversation. Creators are great at this. Brands still haven't caught up, and it's one we're really excited to continue exploring. And the key here is that authenticity piece. So love is the #1 verb used in brand videos. I mentioned this, but brands are still saying you'll love this product, you'll love the concept, you'll love how chic and minimal it feels. We know that most women don't necessarily speak like that. Another word that's in prominent beauty ads is radiant. I've never heard people say that in everyday life. But most of this stuff, the creator space, love this stuff, love the way, love it, oh my God. Very simple, very everyday, but very effective. This is the money shot here where you have all of the findings. I think every experiment starts with this. If I could leave you guys with one thing today is, I love to talk about all my data points, all this, but frankly, you guys are gonna do something, you're gonna put it in market, and then it's not gonna work. So everything you see on here, it's gonna happen. We're gonna try things that we think we know, and we're gonna learn something new, but every time we approach something, we don't know, you don't know, we'll find out together. That's the attitude we take with testing and learning and experimentation. And that's really what we hope you guys take from this today is like, every single thing that we do, we test and learn is like, it's not to learn something to prove somebody wrong or right, it's to just set up the next thing. And it's really to continue evolving and advancing our strategies.